Hello and welcome to Emergence Leading from the Field. My name is Artemis and I am your host. This podcast shines a light on courageous leaders from around the world, leaders who are shaping the future in bold and inspiring ways. Moving beyond the boardroom, we feature authentic conversations with guests, the change makers, the visionaries, and innovators who are leading from experience, purpose, and heart from the field where transformation takes place. These are conversations with people who are listening deeply, acting boldly, and are doing their part to shape a more conscious and connected world. Our conversations will offer a rare glimpse into how our guests have overcome challenges while spearheading innovations that have enabled them to lead from the front lines. Be inspired as our guests share their journeys. Today, I am beyond excited to be joined by Tama Kieves. Tama, an honours graduate of Harvard Law School, left her law practice to write and help others live and breathe their most meaningful self-expression. She's the best-selling author of 6 books, including her newest, Learning to Trust Yourself, Breaking Through the Blocks That Hold You Back. Featured in USA Today, Oprah Media, TEDx, and more, she's a sought-after speaker and career success coach and a Course in Miracles teacher who has helped thousands worldwide discover and thrive in their lives, calling and work of their dreams. Tama is known for her smart, spitfire spirituality, electric humor, and the big possibilities that she brings out in others. And I just want to add, before we launch into our conversation, Tama, that for our listeners, this is a conversation for anyone who's ever achieved exactly what they were supposed to and still felt that there was more to come. Tama, welcome.
I'm so excited to be here. I love the intro for the beautiful souls who are going to make a difference in this world. Yay.
I'm going to take you back, Tama. I'm going to take you back to your Harvard Law School graduation.
Oh, God. I'm going to have to charge you extra.
You're throwing your cap in the air.
Yes.
And that cap comes landing down.
Yes. Yes.
Was it light or was it heavy?
Oh, it was heavy, baby. Just again, like so many of us, I had done what you were supposed to do. I mean, I felt excited and liberated to be done with law school, but I definitely felt this kind of sinking feeling also. And so I will take you back. You know my story, but listeners might not, so I might just mention it of, so much of my pain, which began my entire journey, which began my entire mission, was that I was not listening to my own definition of success. I was following somebody else's definition of success. I was doing what I was supposed to. I was achieving what I was supposed to, but there was just this emptiness. And so, I always say, like, when I was younger, I knew that what I wanted to do. When I was younger, I'd always wanted to write. That was my dream. I just fell in love with creative writing. And I went home and I shared this fabulous news with my family that I'd found a calling. But I grew up in Brooklyn, New York, to an Orthodox Jewish family. And nobody said Mazel Tov. This was not a good thing to want to be a writer, right? And I know some people are going to be listening and relating that, again, we're told what we're allowed to be and what we're not allowed to be, right? So my mother said something like, you're going to write? You're going to starve, you're going to write. And that was it, right? And then my mother said something, the practical, reasonable thing of, you can't get a job? You'll write on the Sundays, right? And so I think so many of us get this advice constantly that be practical, be savvy, do what you're supposed to do. Success looks a certain way. So, and don't follow what's in your soul. Don't follow what's in your genius. Don't follow what's in your heart. Don't follow what's in your bloodstream, right? But I didn't know any of that back then. And so basically, I graduated from Harvard Law School and I was on partnership track in a major firm. I was doing really, really well. And I was just so unhappy. Like, that's what began my entire journey, was through pain. I just felt so, so unhappy because I just kept feeling like there's got to be something else. It wasn't right for me. Law is really right for some people. It just wasn't right for me. So finally just somebody had said to me, which became the basis of my first book, think about it. If you've been this successful doing something you don't even love, what could you do with what you love? So that's my whole backstory of just what brought me to the brink of change, transformation, learning new tools like A Course in Miracles. Because I think for many of us, I'll just speak for myself. I need pain to be open-minded. I'm not that open-minded. I need pain. I need to be hit over the head. I need to, I need suffering before I will open up to my highest good. So anyway, more than you asked for, probably.
Oh, I love it. I love it. And you said something there that I want to kind of circle back on. You said, your mum said, what are you going to do? You're going to write, you're going to starve, you've got to do this on Sundays, go get a job, do something real. And so many of us have, we may not have had that from our mums. It may have been our own inner voice saying, oh, I don't have the courage or bravery to risk that. And what happens with all these years that I've spent studying? And what about all the money? And what about all the things? We fall back on something practical,
Mm,
right? But
yes.
what's the definition of practical?
Woo! Woo! Get to it, baby. That
Let's go.
that to me is the most important question you could possibly ask, right? I have a saying in one of my books that says it's more practical to be magical. It's more practical to be
Mm.
magical. And I know if I would have read some line like that or heard that, I would have rolled my eyes because I'm a New Yorker and I'd be like, yeah, right, whatever. But there is truth to that. And my main message, and I know we're going to be talking about A Course in Miracles tonight and how that works. And, so much of that is, it is more practical to listen to your deepest genius. It is more practical to listen to this guidance that is in you, that is only in you. And we all have it. And again, some of you may be called to leave law. Some of you may be called to go deeper into the law. Some of you may be called to do what you're doing, but do it a slightly different way. The form of this doesn't matter. The motivation does, right? And like why we're doing what we're doing, right? And so to me, practicality is such a great question because so many of us make so many assumptions about life, right? Well, I'm too old. I mean, that's great if you're young, or I don't have that kind of money, or I have 5 kids to support, or I have this, or whatever it is, right? And we have these immediate assumptions, and I know they feel realistic, and they are. So I'm never saying we don't consider facts, but I am saying that we don't limit ourselves to an old interpretation of it. Because just to give you an example, it was a hell of a lot more practical for me to leave a law practice to find out who the hell I am in this lifetime and to save my life and my health, right? Than to work and to grind away because I had told myself, oh, it's too late. And you got to just be normal for Christ's sake. Can't you be normal? And then I realized, no, I don't really have a shot at that anyway. So what's the difference? But it was just more the thing of what was practical for me was to be aligned with myself. Like I still have doubts and junk and stuff that comes up in life. But what I don't have is regret. And what I don't have is this wondering of, am I doing the right thing? Am I doing the right thing? So I would say for anybody listening, and especially, like I said, if we get into talking about A Course in Miracles, we're going to look at all the assumptions you make, all the immediate ideas that you have about how reality works. And I want to question that because there's another way.
I'm going to take you a little bit deeper then because I want to explore this and these teachings from A Course in Miracles. And for our listeners, Tama is one of the most amazing teachers of A Course in Miracles. I've been so blessed to have been on your courses now for the past almost a year, and it has been phenomenal, the work that you do and what comes out of it. So we're lawyers, right? We're adversarial.
Mm-hmm.
We know how to argue. And we know how to talk our way out of things. So I've got this voice inside that's saying, I can do this. I can be a lawyer, but I also want to do something else. Or it's time for me to move on and take my brilliance elsewhere. And we argue with ourselves, right? Because that's what we're trying
Mm.
to do. How did you learn to stop arguing with yourself? What
Oh,
was
that's
that?
so
What
good.
was that trigger that made you say, I'm ready?
That's so good. Thank you. Well, first of all, my newest book, Learning to Trust Yourself, is exactly that. So thank you for the lead in that you didn't even intentionally do. But I'm going to say it because it's just like, oh my God, that's exactly what it is. So I wrote Learning to Trust Yourself because I felt like so many people, not just lawyers, but so many high achievers, so many people in this life spend so much time doubting yourself. You get an instinct, you get an idea, you get a preference, but then you doubt yourself and you call that self-inquiry. You call that self-awareness, but it's self-criticism, right? And so what I want on this planet is for people to really be listening to the deepest voice inside them, the highest intelligence, not just your brain's intelligence, but the highest intelligence, and to be undiluted in that. So when you ask me, how did I learn that? I'm still learning it. I'm still learning it every single day of my life because we live in a world that tells us limits immediately, and it's just presumed. And you're savvy if you're listening to those limits. You're considered experienced and intelligent because you know the way this works. And that's sad for a lot of us because one of the things that the Course in Miracles teaches, it's about unlearning. It's about not so much everything we think we've learned, but it's about unlearning these judgments and assumptions about how things are. So for me, it's still scary. I'm human and I'm a nut. I mean, like I'm neurotic. I have a very active brain. And so when I wrote Learning to Trust Yourself, I thought, oh my God, in teaching these concepts of how to get out of your own way and how to listen to that genius and how to undo blocks, right? I thought, oh my God, if this works for me, it can work for anybody. Of because it is a constant practice. It is an intelligent practice of deciding what voice in my lifetime am I going to listen to? Because, people say you need to listen to your inner voice. You need to follow your inner voice. But I'll go one step further and say, which inner voice are you listening to? Because for me, one of the things I wrote was that the purpose of this lifetime is to listen to your inner voice. But it's the inner voice of love, not the inner voice of fear. It's the inner voice of strength. It's not the inner voice of weakness. And I'm going to say this to every person who might be listening, because I'm just so excited to have you all, is that you're intelligent, you're bright, and you have a genius in you that is not in me, that is not in anyone else. And it would be a crime against humanity if we didn't listen to ourselves. And that genius communicates in different ways. It could be how we're kind to our wife when we don't feel like it, or how we show up for a client that's super difficult, or, again, the assumptions we're making in every aspect of our life. It could be big things about impact, like, yeah, I want to start a nonprofit that blah, 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 right? It could be that, but it could be the impact of, I want to show up with peace. I want to be the presence of the alternative. I want to do this differently. In a field that's adversarial, in a field that is, very articulate and argumentative, I want to show up in a different energy and create different results, right? So for me, it's about listening to that. It's about learning how to trust and listen to this deeper voice in you.
Well, they say the voice of love, right? Not the voice of fear.
Not the voice of fear. Yes.
A lot of people think, and I know, you probably went through those thoughts as well. I know I did when I was transitioning out of full practice. But we've done all this training, and some people think, oh, it's all going to go to waste.
Yes.
But what my experience has shown me is, oh my gosh, not only does it not go to waste, it is the foundation and the basis for what comes next. What's your word of advice to people, and whether they're lawyers or not, like anyone who's listening to us who is thinking, I don't want to be a vet anymore, or a doctor, or an accountant, or a whatever. A teacher. I want to do what this genius in me is asking me to do.
Yes.
What's that one thing that you say to them to say,
yeah.
It's not a waste?
It's not a waste. Well, first of all, saving your life is never going to be a waste. I mean, let's just be real. If you think you spent a lot for your education, you're going to spend a lot more on healthcare, at least in my country. I don't know about your country, but if you don't listen to yourself. But I think the two things I would say actually is that for me, one of the shifts I have, and by the way, when I'm talking about A Course in Miracles and I say a miracle, right? The definition of a miracle in A Course in Miracles is a shift in perception, right? It's a shift in perception. It's like I'm seeing it one way, and then all of a sudden I see it completely differently, and it opens up a whole world, right? So this is an example of that, right? Because I had the same thought of, I don't want to throw away like I work so hard and my God, I killed myself in law school to get through law school, and you're going to walk away from this or you're out of your mind. Of, but what I finally realized was I went to law school to increase my opportunities. I went for a professional education to increase my opportunities, not to limit them. Right. And because I had been thinking, well, you can't do that. You're a lawyer and you can't just take off. You're a lawyer, and I wanted a job waiting tables at one point. And it's like, you can't do that. You're a lawyer. And so I finally realized I want freedom in this lifetime, baby. I went to law school. Part of it was because I wanted freedom, right? I wanted to be able to do something and make a living that allowed me freedom. And I realized that my opportunities were starting to limit me, not the opportunity itself, but what I was doing with it, right? And so that's the first thing I would say to anybody is don't let your higher education limit you from what you think you want to do, especially because if any of us are transitioning into something else, it might be small steps. It might not be like, wow, I do this big thing right away. I might do a small thing. I might do a tiny thing. I might play, God forbid, play, right? And so the other thing I would say, because a friend said this to me and it was so, so helpful because I remember when I was leaving law and I was terrified and I was so scared. And a friend of mine said, hey, Tam, it wasn't Harvard Law School that gave you your intelligence. Harvard Law School didn't. You got into Harvard Law School because you were intelligent. Harvard didn't hand you that. And so she said, anything that made you a good lawyer, anything that ever made you successful, you're not leaving that in the desk. You're taking it with you. All those skills, all those experiences, all that EQ, all that whatever it is, it's coming with you. And that helped a lot because we tend to get locked into forms in our life that it has to look a certain way. But I think the human spirit is creative and evolving and wants to express in many different ways, right? And I would also encourage people who are listening, whether you're transitioning out of law, going deeper into the law, starting something on the side of the law, whatever you're doing. You may not even know what you're doing. But to not be afraid of it being small, to not be afraid to take those steps, because one of the things I would say ain't no small thing. If you are listening to your spirit, if you are listening to your soul, if you are listening to your genius, there is nothing small about it. And there's an energy there that's going to move.
Love it. Well, I would also say if you're questioning and you don't know where to start, sign up to one of Tama's courses because that's the best way to start.
What an excellent advice, Artemis. My God.
Excellent advice. I'm good at giving good advice, Tama. I'm going to ask you now about the people who want to stay, the people who want to stay in the law, the people who want to stay as accountants and doctors and teachers, but they want to bring that transformation into their work.
Yes.
I want that genius now to change the way that I show up as a XYZ.
Yes.
How do you integrate that? How do you allow that to happen from your experience?
Yeah, I think a lot of it. So I'm going to talk Course in Miracles, right? Because we
Please do.
So I'll just bring that in a little bit, and by the way, I'm sure most people know, or many people might know, but just in case you're thinking, what the hell is A Course in Miracles? It's a spiritual psychotherapy program. It's a mindset training. It's a mindset training that is profound and amazing. And for me personally, is a source of everything good in my life. I would not be anywhere, having become a best-selling author, a coach, a worldwide speaker, blah, 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 would not have done any of this without this mindset training, right? And like I said, if it could train this mind, it could train anybody. But to answer your question about how do I transform something where I am, right? Especially if I feel stuck, right? Especially if I feel like, whatever. The hardest work for all of us in any setting, I think, is to know that the reality that you're thinking you're seeing is not stuck, is not set, right? We have a definition and we lock it in, right? Like, well, you can't transform law because this is the way it's done, or that's what's happened, or my boss wouldn't let me, or the firm wouldn't agree, or whatever, right? And I'm going to ask you to think in terms of, I don't know, right? I don't know, right? I don't know what's possible here. I don't know what anything is for, right? And so even if you've had experience of being blocked or limited, right? Of can you begin again? That's one of the concepts in the Course in Miracles. Can you choose again? Can you start now? Can you not be so smart in assuming you know how it is, right? And so I'll give you an example. As we're talking, I'm thinking of this, which is not related to law or anything, but my partner, Paul, and I, many years ago, we were having an issue in our relationship, one of many, and I at one point got to a place where I wasn't clear that we were going to stay together. And I had said to him, I don't think I can do this. I just don't think I can do this. I don't think I can do this relationship. I think this relationship's over. And he said something brilliant and Course in Miracles induced. And he said, I think you're right. I think this relationship is over. I think we need to create another one. I'm like, oh, damn, I have to renew your contract now. But I love that example because it's a good example, right? Of that not assuming you know what's possible. Because I'll just say a few other quick things. Like one of the things the Course in Miracles does for me is it changes the nature of the relationship I have with myself. Left to my own devices, I will see rejection. I will be insecure. I will see you don't like me. You don't agree. This can't happen. Or I'll have old beliefs that have always dogged me. I'll only make a certain amount of money. I'll never get past that set point. Or, I'm not as good as other people because I don't have a Harvard Law education. I have a blah, 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 right? My version of that was, I'm not really that. I'm a creative person that, so again, we all have our beliefs about ourselves. What A Course in Miracles helps us do is to align with ourselves in a different way and to recognize that there is a higher power, a higher intelligence, a light, a brilliance, whatever you want to call it, a consciousness that is in you that can guide you. And that if I'm thinking I'm doing this alone, yeah, I'm screwed. If I think I'm doing this alone, I'm fearful, I'm small, I'm limited, or I'm seeing through the eyes of my smaller self, right? But through the eyes of my larger self, through the eyes of partnering, of saying, there must be a reason I have this instinct. There must be a reason this cause is coming to me. There must be a reason this won't let me go. So there must be a way, right? And that I'm not going to back down and I'm not going to force, right? But I'm going to allow. So, I'll just give you a quick example because I was thinking about it of like one of the lessons in A Course in Miracles is just really simple. And it just says, I don't know what anything means. I don't know what anything means. Now, as lawyers, you're probably all going, what? Because we are very opinionated. We know what everything means. I know what this means. This means this means that. But what that concept is meant to do is again, undo the assumptions. So I was just thinking about it as I was saying this to you. Years and years ago, I got one of the last jobs I had as an attorney, was I worked in an environmental law firm and I thought, oh, well, let me try this. It'll be touchy feely. Maybe I'll like that better. Right. So anyways, I was part-time though. And I did a lot of just legal research is what I was doing. Right. And it was part-time. So it wasn't really part of the firm. And I started feeling not as connected to the firm or whatever. And on the last day, like nobody really talked to me. The senior partner I worked for, I'd hand in my work. They'd use it or I never knew what really happened with it. There wasn't a lot of communication going on. Right. And so the last day that I was working there, I kind of just started slinking out of the law firm. I kind of just like thought, well, I'm not even going to say goodbye because they hate me. That was, I just decided, they hate me. And I probably didn't do that good of a job. And I probably, because nobody said anything. Right. So I just thought, like they probably were just, it was adequate or whatever. And thank God that lesson from A Course in Miracles came to my brain. And I said, I don't know what anything means, right? And do I want to slink out? Is that who I am? Or do I want to show up and just acknowledge I'm leaving and thank you for the opportunity and blah, blah, blah. So I walked into the senior partner's office. I was terrified because I really thought this man hated me. And I really did believe that. And I said, hey, just need to go, blah, 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 whatever. And I don't remember what I said to him. And, uh, where he said, "Oh, thank you so much, Tama, for everything or whatever." And I said, "Oh, well, I'm glad you liked it because, I assumed, like I wasn't sure how my work was going. You never really said that much, right?" And he said, "Oh my God, Tama, I'm so sorry. You were wonderful. We never had to say anything. Like we just used oh my God, it was effortless." And I'm like, oh my God. I would have been convinced, I was convinced they hated me, I was inadequate, and I would have walked out and carried that with me, right? But I gave myself another chance, right? And even if that hadn't worked out lovely like it did, I at least kept my integrity of who I am, right? But that's what the Course in Miracles does for us. It gives us other choices. We don't just assume reality. We go into reality with a neutrality, not a forcing, and things move and shift in ways you'd never imagine.
Wow. Love it. I'm going to ask you a little bit. It's a question that came up in my mind, and I'm sure that most people kind of struggle with it. But most of us have gone through it. So, when we kind of challenge the status quo a little bit, when we try to rock the system, we will be rejected, right?
Mhm.
There will be the people around us who think, what is she doing? Or, our own parents who are, what is she doing? um, and Elizabeth Gilbert had spoken of this concept once in one of her workshops around tribal shaming. And it's this this concept that, if you step outside the norm of what we do in our tribe, in our little cohort, you're not one of us anymore. Right.
Mm.
And that's
Mhm.
that's something that a lot of people kind of struggle with because it's scary. Well, what if my parents disown me? What if, and a
Oh
lot of my
gosh,
clients
yeah.
have said to me as well, but I need them to accept what I do. And my question always is why?
Mm.
What
Mm.
changes
Mm.
for you?
Mm.
Right?
Mhm.
And I'm curious what your take on this and what your experience was. I mean, when you became a best-selling author, did your mum finally say, okay, I had it
Oh,
wrong?
you know what my mother said? "Oh, we always knew she was gonna be a writer. We bought her pens." I'm like, "Revisionist history." It's like, "Ma, everybody bought pens." That does not count. But you are asking such a good question, and I like 3 different things jumped into my mind when you were talking. So, like, the first thing that I will say is you're absolutely right, that when we start thinking for ourselves, people will question it, right? I had friends, I'm from New York, and I had friends that, would say, "What the hell happened to you? You used to be normal." It's like, "What the hell happened to you?" Normal meant you used to judge everybody and be as miserable as I am, and we had a lot in common of, but again, I want to speak to the mavericks that are out there. And if you're listening to a show like this, you are that, of that you are conscious and you are growing. And, uh, and so for many of us, I do think that there sometimes is that loneliness or just that feeling of I don't have anybody. And I really think it's important to get new support systems like a show like this, right? To tune into the things that do support you. It's one of the reasons I do all kinds of online groups. Artemis, you mentioned Course in Miracles. I'm doing a brand new Course in Miracles coming up, Summer of Miracles. Not about forcing,
Sign
forcing,
up.
forcing, but about flowing. So I mean, people could join me there. But I've created all kinds of online opportunities, social media opportunities. I'm not the only person. There's probably a lot of people out there that if you're growing, you may need to be around other people who are going to say, rock on, baby. We got you. Right. Or that's okay. You're feeling faulty and tenuous. Rock on. That's fantastic. You're alive. Right. Rather than, oh, that's because you're doing it wrong and you should get back with us. So to answer your question, I was terrified of my family. I was really terrified of my family. And I remember, like, I don't always tell this story, but I will. I always make fun of my mother because she's easier to make fun of, but my father was really scary. My father was just really volatile, and he could be mean, and he could be lecturing and whatever. And it was his dream that I be an attorney. He was an attorney, and he was really into that. And he never foo-foo this, and never liked the idea of that I majored in English in college. But anyways, I was terrified to tell him that I'm going to leave law. And because I was really afraid that he would literally disown me, because I knew with him that was actually a possibility. That wasn't extreme, right? And I was in therapy, and I'd practice with therapists a million different things of how do I tell him? How do I say this? And if he says this, I'll say that, and all this crap. And anyways, one of the things the Course in Miracles teaches, it's a concept that I have lived by, swore by, saves me, grounds me. And it says, nothing real can be threatened. Nothing real can be threatened. Your real relationships, they will be with you. Your unreal relationships won't. So if somebody only loves you because you're a certain way, right? If they only love you because you're successful, or you bring home this paycheck, or because whatever it is, you wear that suit, or whatever it is, that might not be a real relationship, right? So anyways, I was terrified of telling my father, and it was probably one of the most amazing experiences of my life, because at one point, I finally got the guts up, and I told him, and I'm leaving and whatever. And he just said, yeah, all right. Well, you'll figure something out. You're smart. And that was all he said. And I was like, I just spent $10,000 on therapy. That's all I get.
Yeah.
But actually, those were the holiest words I could have asked for, because I never, ever believed that my father loved me until that moment. I never really knew that, oh my God, he loves me, because I knew that was hard for him. And I knew that he did not like that, right? But he was still going to accept and love me. It was like coming out, right? It was almost like that kind of feeling like, hey, by the way, I'm not a lawyer, I'm a poet, or I'm a writer or whatever. But my father's no longer alive, and I hang on to those words because I realized, oh my God, he loved me. He really did, because real love, right? Nothing real can be threatened, was just of, I don't like this, but I love you, right? And sometimes we don't even give people in our lives the chance to support us, right? Because we just assume they couldn't handle this. And they might not handle it right away, right? We may have had years to think about this and process this, and they may have heard it 2 minutes ago. And so, yeah, they may have a reaction. But the bottom line, again, is I was terrified of losing love. I was terrified of not being supported, whatever, still am. But the other side of it is, it's so lonely to not listen to yourself. And one of the things I will also say, because to me, this is a spiritual path, this is an inspired path, you will meet a love and a grace and an energy that is like nothing else that you've ever experienced. When you start to listen to your soul, you are connected in a different way, and you meet people who connect in a different way, and life gets different, right? And even the people you don't connect with, like with my family, it was always a work of art. I always say my Course in Miracles training always meant like when I'd go home, man, I'm training. And it was because part of what A Course in Miracles is how do I hold acceptance and love and reverence for you, even if you're not holding it for me? And the reason I do that is because I'm setting myself free. I will not let your reactions, and I will not let your decisions decide who I get to be in this lifetime. So, good question.
I feel like the energy that you brought, though, to that, to finally telling him, the energy that you brought to that is what shifted everything. That was the miracle, because you had done so much work already in accepting yourself first.
Yes.
To be able to hold space for you to have that
Yes.
conversation. I find it's just amazing.
That's
wow.
such a good point, Artemis, because I think so many of us are living disempowered lives, right? We are living life, like again, whenever learning to trust yourself, I just started looking at which of my coaching clients just flew effortlessly and which ones didn't, right? And I'm the same coach and everybody did great, but there were some who just really flew, right? And then there's some who didn't. And it was exactly this. It was like there were certain people who got in their own way instead of what I say, discovering their own way, really discovering. And part of it was this disempowerment of thinking, and we're all like this, and I've done this too, so I'm equally as guilty. I need the world to support me before I do this. I need them to get it so that I can think it's okay. And if there is anything this career has taught me of, writing books and getting rejected a gazillion times and being a speaker and getting rejected a gazillion times, of if there is anything that this life has taught me, it is my job to listen to this voice. It's not your job. It's my job. Right. And yeah, would I prefer that you liked it? Would I prefer to get the A? Hell yes, I would. But my own healing has been, I lived one life based on what everybody else thought about what would get me the A, what would get me approval, what would everybody else. I did that already, and it was hollow and achy. And now I am listening to something else. And when it works, it's amazing because I always say, I know that I'm doing the right thing with my time on earth. And there is no compensation like that. Right. So again, for those of us who maybe are listening, having a slightly disempowered life because we want everybody else to get it and say yes, they're waiting for us. Right. They're waiting. Even in writing a book, I can't even tell. It's something as simple as this. I had my very first book, I had a manuscript of it, whatever I'd show people. And, people go, oh yeah, it's good. It's like, this is my life's work. This is my soul. This is what I dedicated everything for. And people wouldn't like get it or say anything or whatever. Then when the book got published, exactly the way that it was, mind you, then people raved because they saw other people raving over it. It's like that tribal thing, right? Like, oh, other people like this, so now it's safe for me to think it's something, right? So I think what we're talking about is really the courage to listen to this genius, to this soul, to this love that's inside you, and to say yes to it and to follow that path, whatever that is.
Makes me think of one of the teachings in A Course in Miracles that I love and I use many times a day, which is choose again. Choose again.
Mm-hmm.
And, we look around us and we see so much suffering and we see so much misery and we see people who are stuck in situations that they feel that they're disempowered in. They feel that they're stuck in these environments or relationships or jobs or, conflict or whatever it is. And it's as simple as just choosing a different option. Right? Making a decision to choose yourself first or to choose peace first or to choose, harmony or grace. And I think where everyone gets stuck is that there's this undercurrent of fear.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
How do we tackle that? How can you trust yourself and undo that fear? When you're trying to choose again.
I love all this. And I'm just going to go back to the situation you described because I think a lot of people are really like, we're probably going, yeah, what she said, which is, of, a lot of people feel stuck or people are listening and going, yeah, that's great for you. Well, you went off and you became a best-selling author. What about the person who's really stuck? What about the person who really has financial devastation? What about the person who doesn't have a higher education? What about the person who, whatever, how does this all work? And so one thing I will say real quickly about that, for me, the Course in Miracles is this ultimate path of freedom, wherever you are. And what its promise is, and for me it delivers, is it's not about freedom when I get over there. Freedom when this changes. Freedom when I get a better job. Freedom when this health diagnosis goes away. Freedom when my husband finally sees life my way, right? It's what you said, it's inner peace. It's this perspective, or it's a way of finding power inside myself, even if, quote, circumstances do not change. Because when I change, my experience changes. So the best example, of course, of this is Viktor Frankl, Man's Search for Meaning, right? And I always quote that because it trumps everything, right? So if you're like, Tama,
Yeah.
you don't know, my job is awful. It's like, okay, yeah, well, I may not know, but Viktor Frankl did. It was the Holocaust,
Yeah.
right? So that trumps things. And his whole point in that was very Course in Miracles' point, which was even in this, even in the worst of situations, you can have freedom, real freedom, right? Because you're giving everything the meaning it has for you. You get to show up as who you are, right? I know of, I can't think of his name, but it's a Buddhist monk that was imprisoned for years and he found a way to be free, right? He found his way to, no matter what happened to him, you couldn't touch his peace of mind. And so I believe we are better lawyers, we are better wives, we are better husbands, we are better everything, right? When we are coming from peace, when we are not trying to do something to get peace as much as that we are working on these perspectives that change things. Because for me, so much of my lack of peace is not what other people are doing. It's what I think they're doing. It's not what
Mm.
they're doing. It's what I'm assuming they're doing, right? Like, in my job, in my example before of the law firm guy, right? I lived an entire 6 months thinking this man hated me and thinking he thought I was inferior and he didn't like me and none of that was true. All he did was not say anything. That's what he did. That was his crime, right? And so again, we're putting meanings on everything, right? So I think you would ask me though the question of how do we trust ourselves when there's fear, right?
Yeah,
Um,
how do we get through that fear? I mean, someone's listening to us now and saying, "Yes, yes, yes, yes. I hear
well,
it. I feel it. But but it's holding me back, right? Like I'm
Gotcha.
scared."
Gotcha. That's fantastic. That's fantastic. So first thing I will say, because I talked to you before and I had said, I always offer a free resource that I give away and it's perfect for this. So I'm just going to talk a little bit about it. And so first of all, I am not against your fear. Like for me, people who don't have fear or don't have some concerns, I'm a little more worried about, right? It's just that, that being human, we do have the mixture and in gingers, we say the mishigas, the whatever, like we have all of it, right? It's just what A Course in Miracles isn't so much that you shouldn't have these things. It's just that what do you pick as your primary focus? What do you pick as the focus that you will make yours, right? So I have a technique that I have used now for decades that has helped me so much. I have inflicted it on all my clients and in all my retreats and workshops. And so I'm just going to give you a link for it, which is that gives you a video of me training you to do it. I really, really want you to do this, but I'll tell you a little bit about it. Well, first of all, I'll give you the link. It's tamakieves.com/best dash tool. tamakieves.com/best dash tool. Right. So that gets you there. Like I said, it's a short video where I will really train you on more the nuances that I'm going to say right now, but I'll just give you a general idea of it, of we have multiple voices. And so when you're in fear, one of the things that I've learned from A Course in Miracles is it's not the only voice. It's there, but it's not the only voice, right? So for me, I might write out the fear. I might write out what the negativity is saying, and I'm too old, and I'm not educated, and I'm the middle child, and I'm the whatever, and I screwed up in 1997, so I can't ever do anything right again, and whatever it is, right? I might write that fear out, and like I said, I give you more cues on the video, but then I want you to write to another voice, and this voice, you could call it whatever you want. I call it your inspired self, right? It's a deeper self. It's loving. It's compassionate. It's wise. It's brilliant. It's like the best coach on the planet, right? And so it would almost be like what you would say to someone you loved or your child or whatever, and you let it right back. And what's amazing about this technique, and then you go back and forth and back and forth. And so And like I said, there's just a lot more cues, and I will walk you through doing it. But basically, the whole point of it is that if you're in fear, right, there is a deeper intelligence in you that you can listen to. It's not about negating your fear. It's not about shaming your fear, right? But it is about deciding what voice in my lifetime am I going to listen to? Which one will be real to me? And what I'm amazed at with that technique, and by the way, I think it's phenomenal for lawyers because it really is like the prosecution and the prosecution and the defense. Because literally, I swear to God, that part of me will say, I submit to you, Honor, Exhibit A. Tama was brave when she went up to that guy in high school and blah, blah, blah. It will remember things that I don't remember because perspective will bring evidence. Perspective, the thing you are holding as an idea, you will find the evidence for it. And so what happens for all of us, we're holding these certain perspectives. We don't even realize it. We're looking for our fears. If I believe, like one of my stories always is, I'm going to be rejected. I'm going to be rejected. I'm forever looking for it, and I will find it, even if it doesn't exist, right? So there is that's just one technique of many, obviously, that will help you tap a deeper intelligence that is always available. And I just want to share an example because I was thinking about it. It's not a leaving law example, but it's such a good example, like from Learning to Trust Yourself, where like just the most minute moments in our lives, we are being given advice or guidance, and if we don't listen to it, we are missing opportunities, right? And fear will be the thing that stops us. And fear sometimes doesn't sound like fear. It sounds like good judgment. It sounds like being realistic. It sounds like being practical, right? That's what I love about that inspired self-dialogue technique too. You start to hear that voice and know that voice and you won't choose from it. Anyways, years ago, I was teaching at the Omega Institute. I was leading a retreat there. And I also was teaching what they call Sampler Night, which was a workshop that was free to all the people there if they wanted to come, like an extra thing, right? And so, but I was in the dining room yakking to somebody, and then I realized, oh my God, my workshop began, and I'm not there, So I start flying and running to get to my workshop, right? I see all these people standing out, waiting to get into the building, right? And at the moment that I'm running there, I think, oh my God, I forgot my handout. And I was really proud of this handout. I'd come out with a new handout and I'd come up with this sexy bio in my handout, right? And so I'm having this discussion in my head, right? Because part of me is saying, go get your handout. And the other part is going, are you kidding? Be professional. Are you kidding? You're already late. Be responsible. This is ridiculous. And so thank God my inner voice said, you're going to be more present. If you get the handout, you're not going to be fighting inside yourself. You're going to be more present. So do it. You're going to do a better workshop. So I let the people in. I just told them, hey, here's an exercise, blah, blah, blah. I'm going to run. I ran to get my handout, got the handout, gave it to them. Did a workshop. The workshop went great. It was phenomenal. And after the workshop, this woman comes up to me and she says, I would love to have you on ABC News. I'm a producer and I would love to have you on this segment. And I had just been saying, I want to do more media. And it was amazing, right? And so I met with her afterwards and I asked her, that's fantastic. I'm just curious, what made you make that decision? And she said, well, it was that handout. Because when I looked at your handout and I was reading your bio, it was everything we were looking for this segment. And so I was like thrilled because it was like, oh my God, my inner voice was right. But then the even funnier part, the kicker of this story was, she said, I wasn't even going to go to your workshop because I hate being late for workshops and I wasn't going to go. But I saw all these people standing out there and I thought, oh, I'm not that late. I can still go. So she came. So I love that story because it's a silly example, a great example, but it's just like in the moment, what voice do you listen to? Because the practical voice will say, well, you can't and you shouldn't and people will judge you. And this other voice kept insistently saying, that instinct, that intuitiveness that we all have that said, no, go ahead and do this. It opened up an incredible opportunity for me. It then inspired thousands of other people who saw me, right? And so that inner voice always has a plan for us if we're listening to it.
I have full body goosebumps with that story. Full body goosebumps. Wow. And there's that
I've
word
never told
practical
that story,
again.
by the way. I've never told that story on a podcast.
Really?
Yeah.
Well, thank you. I feel
Yeah.
really honored that you're sharing it with us
Mhm.
tonight. But that word practical came in again when you were saying, the other voice was saying, be practical, you're late, you have to, and the universe was saying, no, there's a reason for this handout. There's
Mhm.
a reason you prepared it. There's a reason it has to be shared. There
Mhm.
is something more that you can't see, right?
Yes.
Because you can't
Yes.
see everything. We can't see everything. It's part of the process of having faith and trusting in that voice and that guidance. Wow, what a story. What a story. Um,
And for most of us,
gosh.
particularly lawyers, right, to go past that conditioning of what's
Mm,
acceptable, what's practical, what's intelligent, what's realistic. And like you said, you can't see it, right? It's like to trust that. And when you ask, how do you trust it? I think it's just little experiments, things, something like that, trying it in that step, help me believe it more, right? It just, like you might not believe these on things on faith, nor should you. Right? It's just that one of the things I love about A Course in Miracles, the thing that hooked me, because when I first looked at it, I thought, no freaking way, I'm not doing this. Right? But one of the things it said was, you may not like these ideas, you may not believe them, you might blah, 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 you might find them startling. And then it just said, use them and they will work. And because they work, you will have faith. Right? So it's that same
mm,
thing. I think we learn how to trust by doing little things and trust and seeing what happens because of it, following that instinct more often.
it's what John Kabat-Zinn says in the mindfulness-based stress reduction training, where he says, you don't have to like it, you just have to do it.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because the impact, and you'll see the results, and that's enough, right? The minute you
Yes.
start to see that things are shifting and changing, you realize that that's what's working. All right, so I've got one for you here. If you feel comfortable to do so, I would love for you to read us something from your new book.
Cool. Cool, cool, cool.
Maybe
Yes.
wherever the heavens decide that the page opens.
Cool. I'll have to trust that, right? Well, I have something here. So, it's not as pretty a passage as most of my pretty passages are, but it's the one that's open and it's relevant to what we're talking about. So I'm going to read from Learning to Trust Yourself. And by the way, like what this book is it's all the blocks that we have to trusting ourselves, right? So there's short little essays, like just like what we're talking about, short little examples, but more practical steps or focuses of how to do this. And so this is from the intro, though, and it says, exceptional focus creates exceptional results, which is exactly what we're talking about. The right focus lights up circuits in your brain and energy you didn't know you had. Perspective changes your world. Trusting yourself is a focus like none other. You learn to stop diminishing yourself. You unlearn every assumption that weakens or dilutes your genius and vitality. And maybe, just maybe, you love your own being in a way that empowers you to accomplish damn near anything you decide. I would love you to leave this planet with no regrets. Freedom in your veins, seashells in your pockets, humming or wailing out the note of your lifetime, a stream of contribution in your wake. We can create with sacred powers or something like it while in real time. We can experience real time, magic, optimization, and homecoming, and the time of our lives. This is what it means to trust yourself deeply. This can be learned. This can be practiced. This is what I offer you in this book. So,
Wow.
yeah.
Thank you. What a passage. Well,
Yeah.
I want to finish because we can probably talk for the next 5 hours, but I'm going to finish on a high note.
Okay.
I'm going to finish on a high note. Not that everything that we haven't spoken about was already high, but I say this for a reason. Because you're listening to us now, you might be sitting in your car, needing to switch off the engine and step into that office, or you're standing outside your office listening to us before you step into work, and you think, I don't know if I can walk in there.
Mm.
I don't know if I can do this right now,
Mm.
right? What's the one thing you want our listeners to take away to
Mm.
bravely step into that office, to bravely step back into their lives? It could be even your keys in the door, right? To step into your house.
Mm-hmm.
What is
Yes.
it? What's that one thing?
That's a great question. I guess the first thing I would say, and again, it's a concept in A Course in Miracles, which would say that it's never about fighting your life. There is nothing wrong with your life. If you weren't meant to be where you are, you wouldn't be, right? Even if we're in the process of change, even if we're in the process of transformation, there is something here for you right now, right? And so that of, that again, walking into wherever you are in your life, it's crafting who you are. There's something useful. Again, we have these perceptions that, oh, if only this wasn't here, I could do X. If only that wasn't this way, I could be Y, right? And I'm going to say that there's a perfection in what's going on right now, even if it's pain, because pain will lead you to where you want to be. And I know for myself, it was terrifying to feel that pain, and it was terrifying to feel like things were not working or whatever. But underneath it, there was such a love. And underneath it, there is already a path. So I guess that's what I would say is that there's always a path that you're on. That there, for me, my excitement for everybody is that you're already on a path. There is a path for you. There is a way for you. It's just tuning into it, listening to it, not being afraid to feel your feelings, right? And not assuming we know what's right or not, right? But I don't believe anybody's ever in the wrong life. I don't believe anybody's ever in the wrong moment. And I believe, like you said about the choosing again, we can have a completely different experience right here. But it's about listening to yourself and getting behind yourself and trusting that love that's inside you.
Beautiful. Tama, thank you so much. Gosh, what a conversation. I guess, it's an invitation to listen to that quiet place, or sometimes that loud place within, right?
Hmm.
Paying attention to that voice that sometimes sits in the background saying, hello,
Yeah, and
you're
and and
listening to all the other voices except for me.
And along with that, get resources, get support. Don't be alone with this. Let people hold you and connect with you because sometimes people can see in you what you can't see in yourself. So, join me for A Course in Miracles if you can, of at any time, or just again, or if there's something else that's speaking to you of like, I would just say like, really start to feed the directions that feed you. Right? Of like, in
Mm,
terms of listening to that inner voice, get that support, get that constant, consistent reminders, right? Of, people who remind you, places that remind you, the things that lift you up, the things that give you energy. Invest in it, try new things, right? Because we get stuck in just thinking we're stuck. We think this is all of life, and other people can help shift us. And there is completely another way, and you learn from other people.
yeah, absolutely. Tama, thank you so much. For all our listeners, all the links and all the details will be in the show notes, so you will be able to access everything that Tama has so gracefully shared with us. And I know that there are amazing things on the cards for you. For those of you who are in the US or close to the US or in North America, there are retreats that are happening that Tama runs and talks that she's doing all over the place. And if you can pin her down somewhere, then it's most definitely worth being in her presence and being in her energy. Tama, thank you so much for today's conversation. I really appreciate it. It was beautiful.
I'm so honored, and thank you for this work. Thank you for being a voice in this world that is sparking this conversation for so many. Thank you. It's an honor.